Welcome everyone on Tuesday, June the 4th. We have quorum, we are ready to go. I am calling the meeting to order. I have a motion to adopt the agenda. Thank you. Second, any changes, of which I have one, but I'll let somebody else go first. There being none at this time, I'm going to ask that staff does a verbal report on personnel complement, and that would be under CAO, got to count the numbers, 8.
85?
5. Thank you. And do I have to be in-camera stuff now?
No.
Nope, we'll come to that later.
Oh, yeah, actually.
And I think we should do it now.
Yeah, no, if there's a ground
Okay,
on.
and then I'm also going to add in camera for the closed meeting. God, my nose isn't working today. So that'll be section 14, closed council meeting. So we would add B, which is Kelvin Grove lot. And the reason to add it into the closed meeting is section 91E, if I have it right, which is sale of assets.
That'd be C, not
Yeah,
B.
yeah.
It's C?
Yeah.
C. Thank you. It's 91E, it's number C.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any other changes? Gone?
So I passed around the poster that goes with the report regarding the strategic planning stuff, and it's just this year's updated representation of what's in the report. And then I also have on table report with respect to the tree application 94 when we get there, which was sent out to council, but I don't know if anybody actually had time to review it.
It did get out earlier today,
Right.
so okay, so that's on, so we'll dish that on table at the time. Thank you.
Or I could pass it out now, and that way I can also hand out the extras to the gallery.
Good, why don't you give me a couple galleries?
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, a couple? Oh, I don't know how many extras I got. Why don't I do that?
Well,
I'll go around
I
the-
can go online
There's
somewhere.
enough.
Okay.
I already got mine.
I don't have one, so.
All right, so this is an on table.
This thing is here.
Trees.
Here it is.
Trees. Tree committee.
Yes.
Yes, I think he's going to, yes. Okay. All right. So, any further discussion, changes on the agenda? Going, there being none. Approved. Done. Public participation. Ruth.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My 2 minutes, I will try to focus on one point, because I have many, but that is to do with the climate change. Climate change, evidence of climate change this winter. As we know, they were personally affected by the consequences of storm surge. Variable winds, there were 4 major storm events over the winter, and the damage around House Sound was significant. And I have a report that I'm giving to local governments and to the Ocean Watch discussion on Friday. We're moving from cleanup, which there's been a massive cleanup effort, to prevention. And when I talk about we, that's the House Sound Biosphere Region Initiative organization. We're looking at best practices for dock construction going forward. We're also looking at how communities around House Sound are responding to sea level rise, and just having that discussion. There's a wealth of information out there. Islands Trust has had workshops. As I don't have a lot of time, I'll get to the point. Lions Bay made a commitment. It's embedded in our official community plan to take action, climate action strategy. We have targets. The village has targets. The village signed on to the climate change addendum commitment, and that's all in the OCP. So I'm offering to provide where I support or that I can to the village to reinvigorate that conversation about the realities, like where are we at, what's going on, what are the predictors, what's the commitment the village has made, and how can we look at taking advantage of the incentive programs that are out there to make whatever small or large changes that we can to prevent further damages, but also mitigate costs in the future, and also just do our part towards greenhouse gas emission reductions and climate change based. So that was 2 minutes, or do I still have another few seconds?
Keep going. Keep going.
So there was a climate action task force at one time that I led back in the day, and I'm not saying that I'm looking to lead or to try and create another task force, but I am willing to, with the village support, organize with you a workshop for the community that would involve just be a conversation about what information is out there, what have we committed to, what can we do as a community in the fall.
Thank you, and if I could hold you there, if you could stay there for a second. If you'll give me a little leeway on this one, Ruth and CAO. From my perspective, it's 3 more meetings until council and staff break for August. And I know that staff have got a lot on the plate between now and then. And I can't see that anything of major significance relative to any work on climate action is going to occur during this period. And unless somebody's shooting their hands up, ready to put it,
was coming, didn't it?
put in, well, of course, you think I'd lay up easily? But I don't want to send you away nebulously either, Neville. So I think that you've got your council champion now, Ruth, and a opportunity there, not to say that our staff people aren't supportive as well too, but I just know where I and other projects that council have on the go, it's the time compression and the resources just are a bad mix right now. So for me, I would see that fall would be a very good time to reintroduce this when even on our strategic plan here, climate action doesn't hit this in a meaningful fashion at all. And yet, if you were to poll around the table, it would probably be in the top 5. So we're much smarter now than we were in January when we did this, or would realign stuff. So I think you've got a willing audience here, unless I see a nod to the contrary. But I think we should table this for now. I think on a off-the-grid thing, if Neville wants to pursue this in preparation for that, or what it might look like, I would be fine with that, and I'll take nods from council. Yes, yes, yes. That would be the up and down thing. Okay, so I'm giving it kind of an open mandate a little bit here, because I'm not sure, I haven't done the research to figure out what we committed to. I don't know where we're out of step. I don't know what's achievable, but I hear your point.
Yeah, it's actually, if you look in the official community plan bylaw, it's all spelled out there. And there's a lot of small stuff.
Fair enough, but not trying to be controversial, but in the here and now today, it's not hitting the table as the #1 item.
Is there an ask attached?
Yes. I think what I said was that I would be willing to organize a forum, like a community meeting, with council support, because I don't have any funding for that, but if the council is willing to provide the space, would work with me on an agenda, then it really is, we're talking about just having an evening to start with, to bring people in to understand where we're at.
And you're suggesting a fall?
In the fall.
All right. Council, any comments on what I've said? No?
I
Yes?
had a couple of quick things. So there are some members that worked on the climate action task force back in the day that I know would be interested in getting back involved with this. There's a lot of the stuff that what we went to do is in the OCP. The other big part of this, I think, is the carrot report, which we just recently reissued, because I went to look to the website and I couldn't find the one we made last time, the new one's up. So we got it done by June 1st, just in time. I think if we have a look at that CARIP report, we are making a very slow, relatively no progress. And Pam's nodding her head. I think that's because there hasn't been a lot of support for this, and there hasn't been much of a focus. There's 187 people signed on to that. 140 odd have moved with more. Have moved past level 1. Level 1 is basically bought in but done not much. Level 4 is carbon neutral. I'm talking about the 2017 stats. In 2018, we haven't moved, so we're further behind. 45 people already carbon neutral. 2017, don't know what it's going to be this year. Could be 80, could be a lot more.
Are you talking about communities?
Communities are carbon neutral, so we're lagging behind. And 92% of the people on that list actually have a community-wide plan, and that's all you need to do to get to level 2. That has to be the minimum goal we do for next year. So I think this group could do that kind of stuff without affecting the staff at all, other than bless it and put it on the report.
I think that's an important first step. Thank you very much for that. And unless there's any disagreement, I think Councillor Rabbit is now our champion for this, unofficial until we actually officially make it. You're the person. So
I think there's a lot of people who'd be interested in council as well.
Yeah,
sure
you're good there.
my focus,
okay, so I think if that works for you, Ruth, then we'll leave it until the fall.
Council, it's not like council isn't doing anything.
I don't think we are doing anything.
No, it's not like we have. We've agreed to take an initiative
Yeah.
and pursue a sustainable initiative to put infrastructure on the ground. It's like we're not doing anything.
Yeah.
We are pursuing funding, so we've asked staff to look for funding to we're talking about an electric vehicle charging station, which is a small step, but it is something.
Yeah.
So to say that council isn't interested or isn't supporting it wouldn't be totally fair.
No, you're right. Yeah, we've got wild new stuff. It's very much a can do better, and I think this idea of getting, it's not the Climate Action Task Force again, something different, getting something that the community, because there are people out there that want to help, and we can do so with that staff involvement. Ruth, you were a council at the time leading the task force, and there was community people that I know that were involved as well. And they're still there, and I'm interested in remember what we did and why. And
there we go. Okay, and so Ruth, your date is this Friday to...
Yes. And thank you for the information about the development, the wording, where to find it, the sea level rise information.
Good.
So I'll take that.
And to the council members, Ruth's already sent you the invitation, so if you choose to go, give it a nod. Thank you very much. Okay, next item, number 5, review. Before we get there, to the folks in the gallery, I'm trying to push this baby along here, so in the next half hour, we're going to be on your topic. So we're going to get through this as quickly as we can, and I think you'll see how quickly we go. Review and approval of minutes of the prior meetings. I've opened for changes. I do not have any.
Right. I'd actually, when I read the minutes on the weekend, I actually had written down some comments, but I think you dealt with them in the email this afternoon, Peter, to the Awardigans. I felt we didn't give them an answer, and I think we now have. We've told them what we're going to do and when it's going to be done by. And I think that's, sorry, Peter, Brian, your contributions here.
Yep. I think we're covered, and I'm happy to say
I think that's good. I
answer.
thought we hadn't actually, the reason I kept asking the questions is because no one gave them a clear answer.
No.
Now we have.
Okay.
So I think that needs to be recorded and we'll wait till we This is the one thing I had. Yeah, I'm good.
You're good? Councillor Bain's good. Councillor C, you're good. Councillor Bernier, we're good. Fine. Motion to accept them per minutes. Good. Second. Done. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes. I also had none.
had one item on page 8. This is about the Brunswick lot in the One Brunswick Beach. So as I understand it now, the owner's going to take the initiative to apply for an encroachment review. That's correct.
Yeah, so what we have discovered is that there was an encroachment agreement registered. However, it had no survey attached to it. It referenced only the carport.
Okay.
Without the survey attached to it, it's kind of useless. Ultimately, the resident did provide me with a copy of a survey that was done at that time. But we need to add, whether formally or informally, the addition of the deck out on the beach side. And then resubmit the agreement. I think the easiest thing is just resubmit it as amended would be the quickest. And but I'm going to go through that, and I still have to arrange to go and determine the actual placement of the deck in relation to the survey. So I will follow up on that, and ultimately it will reach a conclusion where it's registered in accordance with the intent of the resolution.
Because they only explained how they intend to comply with the clause in the encroachment agreements that says you have to do everything to the building code, for example. Is that...
Yeah, well, that was a point that you had raised, that I need to review in light of the agreement that was registered already, as opposed to what our current forms look like, was the way I was kind of leaning. But I need to consider those things as a whole and see how we can best move it forward.
Okay.
No change?
Well, it's just business arising.
Just business arising. Yeah.
Didn't bring. You're satisfied with that, Councillor Abbott?
Yep.
Okay, good. Any other items arising? Tick, 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 tick. There being none? There are none. Unfinished business. Batteries up. CAO.
I think that this is just as per last time in progress, and nothing to add at this moment.
Should we bracket in progress? It may not be done for a while.
If you might as well just say in progress at the moment. That's what
Okay.
that's what it was in the minutes from last meeting.
Okay. Number 83.
Yeah, same thing.
Same thing. Number 88.
I've had further discussions with some people, Fraser Basin, Nettie, Council Record, PDS Society, House and Community Society. But I guess the key before we go any further with this is, would you just remind me, what is the timing for our Woodspoke bylaw application at Metro Vancouver?
For
Because this all came out of the Woodspoke restrictions, right? But before we go any further with some of these actions, I think we need to understand when that's going to Metro, when they're going to rule on it.
So you're looking for Metro support on it?
Well, I mean, this is a different aspect
It is a different aspect.
of the whole
So
topic, but
where I'm going with this, this is leading me, is predicated on us actually knowing what Metro said first. Otherwise, I'm having a discussion about nothing.
right.
So that's
Well,
why I
not
was
just-
asking what the timing was at.
Yeah, I don't know that it would be a discussion about nothing, but I understand where you're coming from.
I would like to do the one
Yeah.
before the
Yeah. So I don't know where things sit at the moment with Metro Climate Action Committee. Did that come up at no, you were at the board meeting, weren't you? So I don't know when it's next up on the agenda, but perhaps
I will find out.
Mayor McLaughlin could
Okay.
check on that and let you know, let us both know what the status is. If you're able to do that, that'd be great.
Okay.
Or I could check with, was it
Roger?
Roger? Kwon?
Roger?
Yeah,
Is that an offer?
I guess so.
Done. There's not another climate action meeting until 17th-ish, something like that. 17th, okay. Works manager.
I'm in conversation with Ms. Monroe, and will be until this is resolved, so.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cunliffe.
And I had the pleasure of seeing Penny again this afternoon, but have not responded to her via email, which I will do by next meeting. So,
Or?
we'll come to a close for next meeting, in progress as it stands.
All right, mark that one on the or else category.
Yes, it's time to come on there.
All right, thank you very much. Moving next to reports. And who doesn't love a good change of dates? And CFO.
Okay. Staff was proposing the amendments as per the report, basically pushing the June 18th meeting to June 25th, and then further pushing the July meetings. One of the advantages of that was you have a big break from July to September, so it minimizes the length of the break. And then changing the September meetings, again, September 3rd was right after Labor Day, so we were thinking, we've changed this in the past, pushing that forward a week, and then the October. So it's sort of
Perfect, and I think that is good news, and I've highlighted to Councillor Cunliffe that one of those days I will be away, so she will be chairing and acting mayor, which she is deputy mayor during that period. So I will...
Which period is that? Really? Which period is that? Which one? September 24th?
So I will be taking the crown with me, but leaving the tiara right on the seat for you.
I don't wear tiaras, Your Worship.
Yes, Councillor. Yes.
I would really like them to stay the way they were, because I've planned a whole lot of stuff around those dates, and I know other people do. Planned all my trips away, I visit my cabin, they're all planned, I have friends coming, I planned around the council. I took the council meetings, I took the calendar, highlighted those weeks, and I said I'm home those weeks. I've got a lot of it, it's just, and I think a lot of the reasons why you have a regular council meeting is another thing. Community, deserve to know whether, without looking at a calendar, it's the first and third of the month. So if we need to get in another meeting or something, have an extra meeting rather than change the whole calendar is what I would prefer to see.
Are there any in particular that are
Well, you can't move one, then you have this 2 weeks in a row. And
Also, I don't think we want to be talking about times when you're absent in open hearing.
Right. Well, the June 18th needs to be moved to June 25th because we need an extra week to do the annual report. It's got to be on the front desk 2 weeks prior to council approval. The only alternative to that would be having a special meeting on the 25th or thereabouts.
If it's a special meeting, it's a small agenda, I can either phone in for it, or if I've got quorum, I don't need to, but I'd rather be here for the meeting. That is one of my trips.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wouldn't have to, June 25th or any time that week, as long as it was before. It would have to be between the 25th and the 28th.
Might as well be a Tuesday.
Are there other councillors in a similar boat? No? I mean, I entirely understand where Councillor Abbott's coming from.
One of the issues with September 3rd is that it's staff as well as council uses August for holiday meetings. And so there's little or no prep time for September 3rd, given our respective holiday schedules.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the reasons for pushing, and then that just pushed other things.
I prefer if we dealt with it by exception rather than just push the whole calendar and disrupt things.
Right.
Without giving anything away, Councillor Abbott, so if we were going through here, the CAO is talking about June the 25th, are you fine with that one?
No, I'm not here.
I think
Okay.
he's suggesting a special meeting for the
Okay, so-
purposes of
Approval of the annual report.
approving the annual report. Does that, any issues with that with respect to the rest of council?
25th?
Yeah.
I'm not here.
Pardon?
I'm not here.
I could call in if it's a special meeting to make quorum. I could call in my cell phone. I can get cell phone, I have to go down a ways, get in a high spot, and stand
Yeah.
like this, but I can do that. I would not want to do that for council meeting or for council meeting.
As CFO Brooke has mentioned, it doesn't have to be the 25th, it could be the 26th or 27th or the 28th.
Yeah.
If
Can be later
if
than
any
the
of those
28th.
dates work better for any of council. In terms of doing a special meeting, leaving the regular meeting at June 18th, I guess.
So June the 18th stays?
That would stay, and we'd have to do a special meeting for just for the approval of
Okay, so that's fine.
the,
Okay, so we're past the
Uh,
June thing, and
and then whether or not we can push the September 3rd or not.
Or just
but
cancel
that's-
it if
We
there's
have
nothing on
canceled it in the past.
Yeah.
It's something we probably should have caught
Yeah.
when we do the schedule for the year. We've
Right.
made a note that the September, that the day after Labor Day is always problematic. It's usually the first week back to school.
Yeah, it's not
So
right.
we have actually canceled it in the past,
So-
and then have the first meeting on the
Councillor, so,
10th.
just, I know, so July the 9th is a problem? Yes, no, no, not for me. So the 9th would appear to be fine.
Well, there's no need to change the July dates, I don't think, if
You
we're,
just leave it as they were.
we're leaving June 18th where it is. We'll just leave the July 2nd and 16th where it is. Just leave everything where it is, other than
The special meeting.
whether or not on September 3rd we should
Just maybe
continue,
just cancel the
have it or
meeting.
cancel it.
Cancel a meeting. I'd cancel a meeting.
That means that we wouldn't have a meeting until the 17th, and we wouldn't have had a meeting since
2
July
months.
16th. So it'd be 2 months.
Mhm.
If there's a reason to have a meeting, can we have a meeting?
I'd much rather we were going to take August off anyhow, and July was where it was always scheduled, so we do expect especially our management exclusive to rotate out on holiday. So coming back after Labor Day kind of resonates with me.
If you think there's lots to get to, you could come on the 10th and the 17th, I guess. If you think
I
there's-
mean, the 17th is mid-month, rack the holidays out of the way. I'm actually fine with canceling the 3rd.
Okay.
Fine? All right.
I guess if we get to a point where we have stuff that needs to be done, then we can always,
Special meeting.
Maybe we can change.
Special
although
meeting.
we can't.
We can't, because we have to do it at a council meeting. We'd have to
Yeah.
do it at the July 16th meeting,
Or,
unless it was a special meeting.
yeah, well, it would be a
We could do
special,
a special meeting, yeah.
meeting.
Well,
But, yeah,
we do special meetings all once in a while, don't we? For weird things.
yeah.
Okay.
No, it could be done with sufficient notice, that's all.
Okay,
That's fine.
so Ixnay on the 3rd.
So
And everything
cancel
else
the-
stays the same.
And then should,
And so the suggested 8th and 22nd for October, that's fine with everybody?
No,
No.
all of that would change.
No.
No, nothing would change. The
we
only
keep
thing,
everything the same.
the only thing we're gonna change
Just
is
cancel
we're
the
gonna have a
September.
special meeting on June 25th,
Yep.
unless anyone wants to suggest a different day that week. Councillor Abbott or whoever, Councillor Barmeyer as well, if he's able, could phone in for that. Or, sounds like otherwise we would have quorum. And it's for a limited purpose. And then we would cancel the September 3rd. Everything else stays the same.
Mhm.
Okay.
Is that
Thank you.
a resolution?
We need to agree on a time for this special meeting.
7 p.m. on the 25th.
Okay.
Okay. Unless, I guess those who would be,
Times we do the special meeting, if it's just one item, we do it
Yeah.
earlier.
would council be amenable to doing the special meeting on the 25th at 5 p.m.?
Councillor Kilmer?
Sure.
Yes, done, okay, and
I'll
we've
be calling in. So
got phone in, so I think we're good. 5 it is.
Okay.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Shauna, it's like a snakes and ladders game.
I've got it.
Got it, good.
So, I think you need to pass a resolution that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go to the
Alright.
resolution then. So, can I have a motion that council approve the amendments as amendments to the 2019 council meeting schedule? First, second, any discussion? All in favor? Gone. Thank you. I would like the staff item number 2, which is the Kelvin Grove Water Treatment Plant replacement, to be left on table for the time being, because we're going to do something in camera, and then once we're done with that, we'll come back to that, which will accelerate us to item number 3, which is the strategic goals and priorities for 2019. COAO, take it away.
So this is basically a reflection of the workshop that we had in December regarding strategic goals and priorities for 2019 and beyond. And after doing a bit of a back and forth with our facilitator, this is what I have siphoned it down to. And basically what we have is anything per the notes that were at the meeting, anything that was already completed has been removed. Timeframes were assigned in accordance with short, medium, and long-term time ranges. Short being 1 to 2 years, medium being 2 to 4 years, and long-term being beyond 4 years or into the next next council. So those notes are reflected as well in the tables, and I don't really have too many other comments other than opening it up for any questions or comments from council.
I'll go first.
Yep.
Everyone else is thinking. So number H on page 35, so that's on the financial liability on this. Yeah. Interesting note there about the evacuation plan work in Dunbar, Squamish and Whistler. I think we have something possibly coming up later about that. Interesting to note of that. The numbering after H goes out of whack with I.
Oh,
Next
yeah.
one should be I.
Yeah.
And then you've got a K floating, so
Mhm.
it's all a little bit out of whack there. Sure we can fix that. If it was the way it's numbered at the moment, not the correct way, between I and J, we previously had a discussion about the highway and average speed over distance. I'm not sure, I looked at my notes and I'm not sure whether we consciously took that out because we thought we had done with it. But I know it's come up again and I know it's something that's still on our radar and I wonder if we shouldn't either drop it back in at the end or does someone remember why we decided to take that out? Some stuff has been rearranged and I can't find that in anyway. So previously it was number L in that section.
Okay.
So the ASOD's just missing, period.
But it's not in here anymore. And I don't know if we thought we were done with it, and subsequently now know we're not, is what I'm saying. Was that the logic?
I think that we are, unless we get a response back from the ministry that says, okay, we changed our minds and we'll do something with it. Council has updated its policy with respect to that matter, and has a Highway 99 policy, which is different than it was for the last council. And steps were taken in terms of pursuing the remaining goal that council still does support ASOD in principle. And our initial foray in support of that was rejected by government, but as you know, we've written again saying please reconsider. Whether anything comes of that, if nothing comes of it, then there's nothing more for us to do other than possible mayor and or council advocacy if opportunities arise in particular settings where provincial ministers are present. But other than that, council has a policy that reflects its views, and that's been adopted, and I'm not sure that there's anything left in terms of work to be done in support of that initiative that should go on here. I'm not saying it can't go on here, I'm just suggesting maybe it doesn't need to, but I stand, I'm open to hearing feedback on that.
I just thought from the last meeting, we'd decided as a group that we weren't ready to let it go yet. And if we're headed on this thing and it came up next year, and by that time we'd eventually decided we were flogging a dead horse or we'd been defeated, then we'd take it off then, but while we're still advocating for it, keep some visibility.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, maybe it slots in right at the end as one of the lower priorities because it's not a focus right now.
Yeah, I would suggest that that we could certainly slot it back in, right, sort of, same vein as the TransLink micro shuttle stuff, saying short-term advocacy, kind of fits the same bill.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same with both of you on this one. I think this, whether it lives or die, this is something that our folks want, and I think even if it's a soft push, we have to keep it in front of us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so if you could include that, Peter,
Yep.
however you do,
Okay.
in the final. Councillor Abbott?
That's all.
Thank you, and I too had gone through this, and my reflection was that over 2 years there's a lot of work here. So there's a lot of work here, and I think even in the short period that some people have been at this table, a lot of these things have been ticked off. So a lot of good stuff here. Again, this is a template. I wouldn't propose to go through the document any further beyond another minute or so, but I think when we come back to budget period and the time when Councillor Abbott comes forward with the climate action stuff, I can see that it's going to be a very busy fall when we really prioritize and identify how short-term really should be, so we can increase our win rate. Anybody, any other comments? Or I will move to be received. I'll put a motion to receive the item. Any second? Thank you. Any further discussion? Received as amended.
It also needs to be approved.
And strategic plan.
As amended.
The strategic plan as amended as well. Thank you. Sue, are we bringing your chart up now? Your thing?
We don't have to. I mean, I'll amend this in accordance with the ASOD item.
Okay.
And of course, bear in mind as well that it's a living document and will evolve as we go through things, and strategies and priorities may change. So it's just being approved at a moment in time, and provides staff with the ability to include it in the annual report this week.
Do we intend to roll this out through a village update? Intention? Do we intend to roll this out through a village update? Is that an intention, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, it would be put on the website as we normally do. and certainly reference it in the village update. I don't know who's writing next on what, or if
I
you want
believe
to reference that.
Councillor Cunliffe is next up, and then it is, I think, I have my book behind me, but it's another councillor the week after. I don't know.
I could certainly, at this point, put something in terms of, because we do want to put something in, letting people know that the draft of the annual report is available for viewing over the next 2 weeks before it comes back to council for approval. So I could certainly put something in that references that, and perhaps a link to the summary poster document.
Good, thank you. And Councillor Barmer, you are, if you're staying with the...
Well, I'm just trying to get my head around how things we've talked about would fit into this framework. I mean, you know, we all agreed we'd start looking into this fast charging element. It's going to draw resources, it's going to take time. So if it doesn't find itself in here, does that mean it's not getting done?
I think it'd be fair to say you've been encouraged by council to do it.
I just
And
want to,
so-
just the machinery, is this going to,
but-
can this backfire if it's not included in here?
No, it's a
I
changing
think-
landscape.
I think per the direction that we've received from council to explore the initiative and the opportunities for grant funding, we have under financial goals, apply for all suitable infrastructure grants. So.
I just wanted to ask the question, if
Yeah.
it needs to be listed explicitly.
Yeah.
But the other, I guess the other point, this is what we saw in December 2018. This year, in the winter, we're going to do this again, and I'm sure you're going to be motivated for that to get higher up the food chain.
Yeah, no, and then
going to get visibility.
so if
then.
we have an opportunity to revisit it within the next 6 months, then okay,
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with
This is
this.
going to come forward during budget period in the fall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get your refs in the summer, it's going to be a very busy fall. And I'm sorry, I was remiss in the second part of this, of the motion, that the Village of Lions Bay Corporate Strategic Plan for 2019, consisting of the goals, priorities, actions, and target timelines be approved. I'll put forward the motion. Do I have a second?
As amended.
As amended. Thank you. Any discussion? None? All in favor? Good. Thank you. Okay. Towing policy. Who doesn't love that? Page 41.
So this is just a very small amendment in order to include the Sunset hiking area parking lot, which was not included at the time the policy was last visited in 2016. So that was a minor change to section 1H and clarified the language a little bit with respect to 72 hours being the outer limit for parking as well. So that was the purpose of that.
On this one, I had a minor typing change, I think. So on H, so we're on the third line is beach parking lot, comma, Kelvin Grove Beach parking lot, comma, or Sunset Trailhead parking lot without, and then strike the. And then having paid the requisite, and then everything else is fine.
Okay.
That was my take out the microscope moment.
Thank you.
Have prior mayorships to, answer to them. Okay, thank you very much, very clear. I'll put forward the motion. Can I have a second discussion on this? Anybody? We understand what's going on here? Okay, call a motion, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Moving on to
The addition to list. The addition?
the addition, which is the CAO director of staff complement.
So just to provide a brief update on that, we have a posting out right now for an executive assistant position that would do what Shauna is presently doing, and Shauna would transition into the office administrator, or the
Assistant.
so the
Admin assistant.
administrative assistant role. And we also have a posting out as well for a part-time deputy emergency planning coordinator. And have circulated that to amongst people in the business. So by mid-June, we'll have a better idea as to where that stands. That's about it.
In your heart of hearts, are you thinking this would be in a good scenario, a late June or July arrival of both these positions?
Probably more likely late July,
Late July.
depending on the person's circumstances, where they're coming from.
Okay, any questions for the
So,
CAO?
what is the second one? The title was it?
Deputy Emergency Planning Coordinator.
Part-time.
Yeah,
Okay, not
2 days a week.
already funded. Okay, no questions for the CAO. The mayor has nothing to report that he has not sent you by email today. I see little bits of info on what's happened with him. Council members, anything to say? Then I observed Councillor Cunliffe and her mighty tribe of Tai Chiites today.
And he gone.
Sorry?
You were the only one that didn't participate, I must point out.
Shoulder rehab. Shoulder rehab. Sorry, volleyball took it out of me. All right.
Was that received for verbal report?
The verbal reports received. Yes, unanimous, thank you. Committees. Trees, Views, Landscapes Committee, application 94, 52 Brunswick Beach Road, and if you could gather your on-table item, just so you're all on the page here. And CAO, why don't you lead us through this?
Okay, so my understanding is the committee, or 3 of the 5 members of the committee, met at the site on last Friday, and went over the application, which is to remove 3 very large trees, fir trees that are on the esplanade on the bank of on the bank, right in the back of 52 Brunswick, which is the vacant lot that we just sold to the Lunds, who are present this evening, and also abutting on the back of 51 Brunswick, which is Anne Marie Gates, who's also in the audience this evening. So the tree committee reviewed the information that was provided to them, which is all in the package with their minutes, or their draft minutes, and includes a report from an arborist that was retained by the applicant from Squamish, and as well as submissions that were presented by the applicants. It also contains information, a summary report from an arborist that staff asked to review the status of the trees. And that person being, I think, the one that cut down the trees in preparation for the lot prior to us selling it. Then there are as well submissions on behalf of some of the neighbors, including Ms. Gates and a couple of others, with respect to concerns about cutting down the trees, given their status as ancient growth trees under our bylaw, and the fact that they have been there, stood the test of time for such a long period. In the opinion of staff's horticulturists, provide stability to the bank, which is always a consideration on all of these tree cutting permit applications. The applicants are concerned, obviously, that if these trees were to come down in a windstorm or a bad weather event, that would be catastrophic if they, when they build their new home. A similar concern was expressed in support of their application by the neighbor to the north at 53 Brunswick. Ms. Gates and others noted the winds that generally cause issues in Lions Bay tend to be strong wind events from the southeast, which tend to topple the trees more often than not, and that effect would land any of these trees on the beach as opposed to anybody's property. That's not to say that winds don't blow from different directions. As the staff person noted, we had 3 very strong wind events last winter from 3 different directions, and the trees managed those events in stride. Again, it was the one that was from the southeast that brought down trees all over the neighborhood, and also resulted in the loss of high waves and the loss of some of our marinas land and damage to boats as a result. The tree committee has posed a number of questions. They did not make a recommendation in the circumstances. They posed a number of questions with respect to, and I'll just go through them from the on-table report that I provided. Does Fisheries and Oceans have jurisdiction? So the applicants would like to place boulders at the foot of the embankment in order to stabilize it and provide more or less a wave break. This is being done apparently in other jurisdictions, such as West Vancouver has a foreshore or shoreline stabilization strategy or plan, and that's one of the things that they've been working on as well. As far as I can see, I don't see an issue with that. I don't know what the status of the requirements are in respect of working in that intertidal zone from Fisheries and Oceans standpoint. Maybe Mr. Jaffer can.
You would have to submit a proposal for the works to DFO, 45-day turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
It can be accelerated if you have an environmentalist doing the application for you.
Mm-hmm.
But generally they're well received as they provide more habitat for intertidal species.
Okay. And do you know, does West Vancouver use barges at all to get close enough to place rocks, or
Yeah,
do they do it from the shore? Or?
They use both,
Mhm.
from the shore and via barge.
Okay. And so your suggestion to the applicants might be to consider retaining the services of an environmental consultant to assist with that application process?
Correct.
And they may have already looked into that, I'm not sure. But I think it's beyond the municipality's jurisdiction, and I don't propose that we become involved in that process other than to simply indicate that I don't see any issue or reason for us to say, no, we don't want these boulders placed on our esplanade, which is what the status of the land is at the bottom of the embankment. So it's technically a highway, and so we would have standing to say something if we wanted to, but I think that it's, given the circumstances, it's not a bad idea if that action is desired by the applicants. In terms of if the trees remain, long-term costs for routine maintenance falls on the village based on bylaw 3.4.4. That was a question from the, or statement from the tree committee. My response to that would be that any maintenance of trees on municipal property throughout the village is governed by Appendix E of the bylaw, which makes any work to be done by the village subject to current budget and labor allocations, and we only tend to become involved in that if a tree needs pruning as a result of it being judged to be diseased or dangerous, or requiring pruning or removal in the case of one that is actually fitting the specifications for being unsafe. So it's done for the purposes of public safety. There's no indication from either of the arborists in their reports that the trees are diseased, and so I would suggest that that is not a basis upon which the municipality would become involved with pruning in these circumstances. What is village liability if application is declined and trees remain and fall or injured? My assessment of this would be that it is none. The trees have not been found to be stressed or diseased by either of the arborists who examined them. There's nothing in either report other than the removal of ivy and a 50-year-old cable to suggest that they're a risk to the applicant's planned home other than comments from one arborist as to their size. So yes, they're big, and yes, if they fell down, they would cause damage. That's a given. Just as if a train derailed at any location in the village, it would probably cause damage. So size in and of itself, per our bylaw, is something to be retained and is given value in terms of the status and definitions that are in our bylaw. Number 4, if the trees remain and the house is built, foundation will encroach the drip line and impact the root system, making them a safety hazard long term. As noted by the applicant's arborist, the root protection zone should be established for these trees before new home construction begins on the lot, and if they don't take appropriate measures in this regard, then yes, they may very well increase their hazard. So I would suggest that before any building permit is granted, that a root protection plan be addressed by the applicants. The build will change drainage and may dry out the root system, creating a safety risk, but building drainage can certainly be designed to accommodate the root system of the trees. The committee suggested that perhaps a third certified arborist could be consulted to climb the trees and assess them further. I don't think it's necessary. We've got 2 arborist reports that both speak to the health of the trees or the lack of any disease or stress. Our bylaw sets out values to be assigned to ancient growth trees, so I don't know that it's necessary. If the applicant wished to do that, then we would want to have a say in terms of who would be retained to do that. In fact, I would want to dictate who would be retained to do that. The cost to remove the trees after the house is built would be much more difficult. That's true. The owners may not build if the trees remain, or their tax implications. And I think that that's entirely up to the owners. I don't think that the village is concerned about any tax implications. Taxes are assessed in accordance with the value of the land and any improvements. If there are no improvements, then it'll be simply on the basis of the value of the land. And if the applicants don't wish to build, and they wish to sell as a result of this decision, if the decision of council is to deny the application, then that would be up to them. I don't think the tax value of building or not building by these applicants is something that necessarily should enter into the equation for this application.
Sorry to interrupt you, Darlene, that's protocol, but we never said we wouldn't build if the trees remained. That's incorrect on this.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm
So
just
I know.
going on the basis of the draft
But
minutes
it's
from the
not
committee.
correct. That's not correct.
Okay.
I don't know where the committee got that from.
Okay, thank you. So some other aspects that were submitted by the applicants through the process of the tree committee meeting went to safety risk, which I've addressed in the draft report, or in the on-table report. And particularly in terms of the stability that the root systems provide for the embankment. I think that removing the trees will, as our staff horticulturist noted, create voids in the earth as the roots decay, and this will in fact lead to an accelerated destabilization of the embankment and erosion. Solar power, I'm not sure what the applicants discussed with the tree committee, and I don't want to venture down there. I think that there are options still, especially with the removal of the cedar that's on their property. Long-term risks if the trees remain, I've already spoken to that, and the root systems. Removal of the trees was only subject at the time of purchase.
That's incorrect, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again,
I
tree
got an
committee.
email from you stating that it couldn't be a subject, so that was incorrect.
Okay.
There was no.
All right.
No.
Sorry, I'm just going from.
No, I'm just letting you know.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Thank you.
I don't know where the tree committee got that.
Just so it's
Okay.
not misconstrued.
Yeah, so you understand fully.
Yeah.
It wasn't a subject, couldn't be a subject.
No, I appreciate, these are draft minutes. They
Yeah.
haven't been approved by the committee in a
Oh, okay.
meeting, but it's, there wasn't a full complement of the committee there, and including the mayor, who sits on the committee normally but wasn't in town. It's understandable that sometimes mistakes in terms of
Just so you're clear when you're
yeah,
voting.
no, I appreciate that, thank you. Changing winds and tides, I've spoken to that already. Lack of village maintenance contributing to current instability, I've spoken to that previously. No reason for us to have gotten involved with these trees, given the lack of any evidence of disease. According to the minutes, the applicants offered to replace the staircase if the trees came out, and if that was a necessity of proceeding with the work. I'm not sure if that was discussed or, yeah, so the options as I see them for council are to, number one, reject the application, to cut any of the 3 fir trees but allow some pruning of the cedar. There's a cedar that's been severely topped, that's growing from the underside of the middle of the embankment, and certainly it's got a bunch of leaders. It should and could be topped, retopped and selectively pruned, and staff had some recommendations with respect to how that could be done, being careful not to kill the tree, because again, the vast root system of what remains of the tree is of assistance in holding together the bank and preventing further erosion. As well, included with that option would be requiring the applicant to provide a root protection plan by a certified arborist prior to the issuance of a building permit. Second option would be to allow the middle fir to be cut down And the reason that that is being selectively singled out is because it has previously had its top blown off, and which came from the southeast and it landed on the beach. But I guess there was some talk about that being a possibility, along with the underbank cedar, but not the other two fir trees, and then the root protection plan again. Option 3 is allow 2 or alternatively all 3 of the fir trees to be cut down, along with the underbank cedar, all debris to be removed, require the applicant to provide a root protection plan if any of the trees are left standing. And 4 would be request the applicant pay for a third assessment of the subject fir trees if they so choose by an arborist satisfactory to staff, with a view to establishing the health of and the risk rating for each of the fir trees, assuming that the agreed requirement to remove the ivy and metal cable plate as applicable. So that would be, I think, a case of a more in-depth review and assessment of the trees by an arborist, and I think Mr. Jaffer has something to add.
Yeah, for option 3, if council chooses to permit all 3 of the trees to be cut down, I would recommend that the owners be required to provide bank stabilization as they bring in their boulders and to replant this slope.
With specific vegetation to be determined? Or
Yeah, by the staff horticulturists, yeah.
And so
something
when you
with
say,
a vigorous root structure.
when you say that the bank be required to be stabilized by the applicants, what kind of stabilization work would you envision that to entail? And are you familiar with the bank and
yeah, so if they're talking about bringing in boulders, there would be a requirement for boulders, geotextile, and some plant material with vigorous roots.
So like a dry stack rock wall engineered?
It doesn't have to be a dry stack, no.
Right.
No. If they retain an environmentalist to work with them in furthering the DFO application, that environmentalist could come up with a bank stabilization plan.
Okay. Okay. So those are the options for council's consideration as I see them. Council may have other ideas, alternative ideas, I'm not sure. And certainly if there are any questions, staff, myself, preferred option would be that the application not proceed. But there are other issues that may enter into that.
Thank you very much, CEO Dillon. So it's a technicality, item D, which is committee, so I'm going to put forward a motion to receive the minutes of the tree committee for information purposes. Yes?
Given that there were a few areas that where those minutes were not in accordance with the recollection of the applicants, and that has been raised already, and they were significant items in terms of some of the things that were characterized. I think that perhaps rather than receiving the minutes at this time, that they be tabled and referred back to the committee for further review.
Thank you. Good. So motion to table, and that the discrepancies are sort of between the tree committee and the applicant. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Good. So that's been tabled. So the application does not go away, so the on-table item becomes the recommendation on it, which is to the council members who have it and the gallery, So the recommendation is, just to repeat, that council reject the application to cut any of the subject 3 fir trees, but allow some pruning of the cedar below the middle of the bank per the recommendations of the staff horticulturist, and require the applicant to provide a root protection plan by a certified arborist prior to the issuance of a building permit. So that we can get to the discussion point of this, I will put that forward as motion. Can I have a second? Please give me a second, thank you. And it's open for discussion now. Council members, anybody choose to weigh in?
Yes,
I'm a little puzzled.
Sorry.
We just tabled the minutes of the tree committee meeting to the next one, back to the tree committee. Yet we're going to vote on a recommendation. It just seems kind of like we're a little out of step, aren't we?
Well, there is no recommendation from the tree committee.
But isn't
So
that based?
their minutes really don't provide council with any recommendation. The recommendation is from staff with respect to the application itself, and having gone through the questions that were raised by the tree committee. So the only reason that the committee's minutes are tabled are to correct discrepancies or deficiencies in those minutes. However, there's no recommendation from the committee on which council is being asked to act. The recommendation is from staff based upon the information in the application and information that came out of the committee meeting that took place on site in respect of those aspects that weren't objected to, I suppose.
Okay, so you're basing your recommendation on the application, not the minutes of the tree committee meeting. I guess that's the part that I'm puzzled on, because if we're basing it on the minutes, which don't make a recommendation, but you're making the recommendation based on the application, I can get that. That makes sense. But it just seemed like we're taking a piece out of the solution here. Yeah, I get it. Okay, I'm okay.
Good.
So can I ask that question a little differently? So as the tree committee told us they will not give us a recommendation, or are they expected to give a recommendation after we answer these questions?
I take it that the tree committee did not have the answer to many of these questions, and essentially they did as we would, defer to staff who since researched it and provided the recommendation. As I read, it's unfortunately I wasn't there, because knowing the members here, without the leadership of the chair, I think they got as much information as they could, and with their expertise came up with as many questions as they had, but we're not in a position to make a recommendation. That's my synopsis of this, because so lacking the knowledge which would have given them the ability to make a recommendation, they've given, in my view, the information to council, ergo to staff as well. Staff's picked up the ball, but it's a technicality because there are discrepancies. We've already done this, that we're just going to table the thing, have the discrepancies worked out, but that still leaves the applicant in the lurch as to what we're going to do. So staff have taken the view that they have put forward a recommendation, which is where our discussion is. So, so far we're talking about the content of how we got here, not the content.
Right. But if we don't know how we got here, we are here. Thank you.
Okay, so let's accept that and focus on the application. So the application is to reject the application, which is the staff recommendation, or to alter it to one of the other suggestions.
Just the one for the point of clarity in my mind. So what's the battery limit between the Esplanade and the DFO jurisdiction? Is it not the high water mark? What's the normal definition? Where does DFO's territory stop and where does Esplanade start?
They don't have a definition line. DFO is concerned with any habitat on the foreshore, whether it's on an esplanade or whether it's the ocean or anything that's detrimental.
But most owners' properties go to the high water mark.
Yes.
And the land up to the high water mark, so the village should own the land up to the high water mark, not true?
Well, in actual fact, the survey of the land, topographical survey of the land shows that the high water, so this is the esplanade running here between the ocean and the properties.
Yeah,
And the high water mark curves
yeah,
various places. So in front of this property, the high water mark is not straight, but it curves through it about halfway through the esplanade. So
no.
it's really, you know, and the high water mark is also noted on the survey as being the bottom of the slope. So the top of the slope is pretty much at the end of the property boundary, property line. There's a 15-foot setback from the property line and the top of the slope. And then it slopes down, and at the bottom of the slope is essentially where the present mean high water mark is. And that's about a difference. It varies because going from north to south across the property at the top of the slope, we go from a height of 19.7 up to a height of 24.7, roughly. So it varies along the way, and then the high water mark comes closest to the bank and to the property at the north end of it. And that's probably where it's most vulnerable, because it's, you know, got a high water mark of about 6 feet, and the property, the top of the slope is just under 20, so you've got a difference of 14 feet. Elsewhere at the other end, where the trees are, we've got 22, 24, in that range, and the high water mark is down at the bottom of the staircase where it curves. And it's basically just a cement pad, and that's at 6.9 versus 6.0 further to the north. So the difference here is more like 7 and 23 as an average, so the difference is about 16 feet versus 14 feet at the north end. So you've got about, these trees are sitting, you know, the one that's closest to the applicant's property is about 15, 16 feet above the high water mark. There was information that was referenced in the applicant's materials to the work being done by West Vancouver and other articles that were written about climate change and weather events and high tides and king tides and storm events and those kinds of issues that also referenced a report dealing with some of the GPS global sea level rise science that's been done, and provincial information that's available on the topic as well. And they talk about sea level rises in the province varying significantly from 11 centimeters in Nanaimo to more than 50 centimeters in the Fraser River Delta. But then it goes on to talk about GPS stations on the BC coast, global sea level rise of 1 meter by the year 2100. Coastal stations get a numeric value of 0 to 5, and the Point Atkinson point in West Van is rated as 2. So if we said 2 on a scale of 0 to 5 is 40% of 1 meter is 40 centimeters. However, it's unclear whether that 2 relates to that or whether it relates to the other information about 50 centimeters being the high amount for the Fraser River Delta. So that would be a different calculation. It would be 20 centimeter rise. So anyways, roughly somewhere around a foot sea level rise is expected, according to this information, plus or minus a little bit, by 2100. So these trees are sitting anywhere from I'm going to say 18 or 20 feet, so that would be 11, anywhere between 11 and 16 feet above high water mark at this point in time. So there is some room, and whether or not the ocean will rise to the extent that it will start eating away at the roots of the trees, I think that's going to be in the next century, but I'm not a scientist. And so by just pointing out this information is there, and that there appears to be quite a height difference still to go. Not to say that, you know, steps ought to, you know, I think it's good to take some steps and stabilize the area through the placement of boulders, and would encourage the applicant to do that if they're able to.
Any other questions?
It was a lot more information.
Okay, then you need to blow a whistle or just clap your hands or do something.
Okay.
Okay, well, you've used your question period, Councillor Abbott. There you go. Any other questions on this? Any discussion?
I have a question for Mr. Jennifer, sorry.
Of a story? I don't know if that might add
Well,
some- add some
I'm
color.
gonna call a motion in a second, so everybody's getting their chance here.
Okay.
You have a question?
In terms of detailed risk assessments of trees, what's involved with that? They drill core holes and examine the inside of the tree and so forth?
Correct.
Right.
They take a look at the inside of the tree, look
Yeah.
for rot, look for damage,
Right.
look for other signs of disease.
Is that something that we did with respect to the trees that we were assessing in Lions Bay Beach Park?
Correct. Yeah, we had core samples.
Right.
The samples showed root rot in the center of the tree,
Mhm.
significant root rot, and that's part of the reason we took them down.
Right. And
So-
do you recall, just offhand, ballpark, what that cost
I think it was about $1,200.
for that? Was that more than one tree?
That was 3 trees.
Three
Yeah.
trees?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I do have a question.
Yes, please.
Because, and this is largely because we're taking on the role of the tree committee. I think that's sort of what we've been handed here. And I wonder how many applications they typically advance that have the majority of residents rejecting or opposing it. So in the past, when an application has gone in front of the tree committee and the majority of residents have opposed those trees coming down, how many of those applications have been approved by the committee?
Well, firstly, the committee doesn't approve anything. The committee just makes
Okay,
recommendations.
so how many
So
of
it's
you-
always council that approves.
Fair enough. Okay. My question is, let me rephrase it then. How many applications have they recommended to go forward where the majority of applicants or residents, neighbors that have been canvassed have said, no, we don't want this going forward? Is there a stat? or
I
is
don't think we've got a stat like that. You know, there are,
Not uncommon for them to grant an application
With majority
with
of-
neighbours.
Okay.
I think that would be fair. No,
it's fairly common for
defer to.
some neighbors
to the
to
chairman.
have
Yeah,
different
no, I'm
opinions.
just curious.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, no,
For
def-
me, the bigger question here is how often does the tree committee ever grant an application for trees that we classify as ancient and we write this bylaw to protect? There's a completely different classification on the way you deal with trees in that tree bylaw when they're classified as old growth trees, which these are by the size of them. And I think that's not a subtle thing. It's a very different. The bylaw reads you have to have good reason of imminent danger, I don't know what words it use, in order to give any permission to cut down an ancient old growth tree. And that's what these are.
These are classified as?
Yes. It's defined by the size of the tree, by the diameter. And I think it's
So it's anything over 90 centimeters, and these are all over 100, like 112, 114, in that range. It's in the material, but something like that. And I've been here for 3 1/3 years, and this is the first one I've seen that dealt with a significant tree, let alone an ancient tree. There's a number of different categories of significant trees under the bylaw, and I don't recall there being any others. that I can think of. But yeah, I'm not sure prior to my time.
I can't think of one that was a significant tree. So, I'm going to allow, we are going to move on here in just a second. I have a question from the gallery, if there's any information you have.
I'd just like to speak because I live down in Brunswick down there. I've been down there for 21 years, so I've seen a number of trees come in on the beach and stuff like that. Just for the sake of information, a tree that was on the beach that got cut up by one of the local people was 28 inches in diameter. That's less than the size, well, that's a 28-inch door there. And I counted the growth rings on that tree, and that tree was 500 years old for a 28-inch diameter tree. And that was Douglas fir. It was a cedar, it was Douglas fir, which is what we're talking about here. Also with the rot, with the core and stuff like that, when you core inside a tree, you core inside a cedar tree, you'll get more rot out of the inside of it than you will a fir tree. They grow different, they live differently, they're different trees. They don't have the crotches that cedar trees have. And so I'm curious if anybody knows how old those trees are. And if I could just read out one little piece of information on trees. It says that every day a 40-foot tree will take in 50 gallons of undissolved nutrients from the soil. It raises the mixture to the top leaves and converts it into 10 pounds of carbohydrates and releases about 60 cubic feet of pure oxygen per day on a 40-foot tree. Those trees are over 100 feet high. They've been growing there. I would guarantee that those trees are at least 300 years old. Based on that 28-inch fir tree that came off the beach, I counted 500 rings. It's sitting in my backyard right now if you need proof of that.
All right, thank you very much for your information. All right, Council, any other discussion? I'm going to call the motion in a second. Anything else? Anything staff would like to add? Nope. Calling the motion.
Can I just ask,
Oh.
why did we not get a recommendation from the tree committee on this one?
They didn't have enough information to make a decision.
Okay. So to all knowledge, these trees are healthy, there has been no core sample done to check the actual
Age or condition of the interior? No.
Okay.
Their questions were all over the place. Any other questions? Call a motion. All in favor? Councillor Abbott, I didn't see a motion. Usually there's something.
So, we're voting on
The recommendation.
the option one.
Option one.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm in favour of option one.
Good. Your persona is changing. Usually you know where you are at all the time. So.
I just didn't hear you read it. I didn't hear the option one mentioned and other. What are you voting on?
Councillor Abbott, you're doing the rope-a-dope on me. Don't do that. All right, thank you. We've moved on. Gallery, the motion's been approved as put forward by staff. All right, next up. And actually, let me think about this for the gallery here. We should be through this stuff in a second. If you want to make any comments in the public participation part.
Can I make a quick question about option one that you voted on?
Yep.
So we have to provide a root protection plan. That's what you voted on.
Yes.
So the trees are on your Esplanade Highway, but we have to pay to have a root protection plan. Is this a bylaw or is this just something you've decided?
It's a matter of the building that you may put on your property. It's quite common, I think, in most municipalities that you have both drainage plans and where vegetation is to be preserved, whether it's on public property or whether it's on a neighboring property. If your excavation, if your building plan, if the requirements of the improvement that you're putting on your property may impact other vegetation, you need to account for that and make sure that it's not damage through the building process. So it's pretty commonplace to require that people requiring building permits take care to protect
So
the
we need
vegetation around them.
To put that, we have to put that in when we apply for permit for construction?
Most of the
Like
time,
touch
it just means that there's a snow fence put around the drip line by an arborist. So an arborist would determine how far around the tree, and you wouldn't be able to put any machinery or drive anything or put any building materials anywhere near that fence line. So
So one of the trees is right on our property line by a corner of the tree.
But you
So
got
that's
15.
the only one that we need to worry about.
correct.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
You got a
So I can
15-foot
talk
setback.
further to you about that thought.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. It's usually where we hand out the pretzels now, you're leaving too soon.
Oh, it was one that you were interested in.
All right, thank you, council, on that, and staff for doing the legwork there. And CIO, you'll communicate back to the tree committee on
Yeah.
this one, however this works, thank you. Next up, emergency services, no report, resolutions 0. And we are at bylaws on page 83, and that would be the traffic and parking bylaw to be introduced and given 3 readings. So the bylaw is before you, so I will ask CAO, do you have any comment before we go to this?
Basically, what we're doing is just tweaking the definition of highway so that it's clear that it includes a parking lot. I think it was readily interpretable that way, but since we had to go in anyways with respect to section 21F, 21F is aimed at trying to assist with the regulation of our Kelvin Grove Beach parking lot. There tends to be, according to some residents, a tendency for some people to loiter and hang out and party and drink and whatever at that parking lot. So this section used to just say camp. It now says camp, loiter, imbibe alcohol, or congregate with others either by day or night on any highway, as now amended to include a parking lot specifically. And the amendment is well, it's inspired by a particular circumstance. It's not, I don't think it's unduly hitting a nail with a sledgehammer. I think it's trying to use the instruments that we have at our disposal to address issues that residents are having in our community. And so I think it's appropriate. And it's basically a case of, it's a parking lot. Park your car and go to the beach. Don't hang out in the parking lot. It's not a place to loiter and do whatever you like. So that's the message we're trying to send.
Okay, have we thought about this congregate with others language? Because you go to a parking lot, you meet your friends, maybe you're waiting for them to show up. Am I going to get harassed by a resident who's going to tell me I'm loitering or I'm congregating? I just don't want this to turn into an undue tool to start harassing people that are using the parking lot as a parking lot. So that's
a valid point.
Just that congregate with others language bothers me a little bit.
I didn't want to open the door in something like a street party, which would have all of these ticked.
Sorry, say again?
Well, a street party would have people invited, I know it's hard to believe. They would be congregating, and it could be during dinner hour or something like that.
But that would come forward as an exemption. For example, Mortgage Dave on Upper Bayview, if he
Okay.
wanted to have a block party, he would come to council for an exemption,
Okay,
right?
okay, thank you.
Well, I think in the past, a lot of them have just happened organically, but.
All right, well,
There's a-
Mortgage Dave is a better citizen than I.
Exactly. I don't know if you did the win.
And let's just keep that to ourselves. There you go. Councillor Barmayer, you should feel satisfied before we go on this. I mean, I get your point. Do you have a suggested change?
Yeah, just strike that congregate with others out.
What about a different word than congregate, something like linger?
Yeah, linger, okay. I mean, now
Loiter.
define linger. Loiter, I feel like loiter covers it.
Loiter's
but-
in there.
It probably does, but I mean, it just, these are words that are attempting to convey a purpose, and, you know, if somebody happens to challenge and succeed in coming up with a different interpretation of one word, we want some other words that
Okay.
kind of give the same gist or purpose or meaning. So linger, okay? Linger with others?
Okay. My concern is more that this would be used not in its intent. And the intent is, what are the intent of bylaws are typically to hold the margins of the community accountable. People that are not working in the spirit of the community, right? That's really the intent of bylaws, is to create these boundaries that people run up against. So my concern is that this is gonna go in the other direction. We're gonna have the next delegation to council is gonna say we're not enforcing this congregation.
You could be lingering while you're loading your car up and putting 4 kids in it and a dog. That can be lingering to
Someone's gonna be
somebody
sound attack
who
on the
may
foot
not
side.
feel that you are readily, speedily evacuating the parking lot to their liking. That is my concern,
Yeah.
and that is a valid concern that I have experienced in the Calvin Grove parking lot, and I am a resident. So I think that this could be opening the door for someone to feel that they could police the parking lot with this language. There's a true concern about people camping or loitering, then call the RCMP. A bylaw officer is not going to be able to come in and control a street party. That's when you phone the RCMP.
Yeah, I'm not really talking a street party, I'm talking,
No, but
you
I'm
know,
talking about the intent, and that language could be very openly interpreted
So,
and cause a lot of unnecessary kind of clashes potentially.
so it's just, the strike is the congregation piece?
I just think this congregate with others, to me, that's problematic.
Yeah.
Those 3 words, to me, are problematic.
That could be 2 people like waiting to meet up to walk down.
Councillor Bain, are you a strike on congregate?
actually, sorry,
Go ahead.
I'm a strike because I think it probably is contrary to our Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Okay. Well, I think that's where Councillor Barmayer is kind of going.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not like our
you see,
village.
I
Okay,
groceries, man, it takes half an
all
hour.
right, so,
I don't want
Can't-
to do it.
But are you with others?
so it's a,
Can't loiter or imbibe
so
alcohol.
it's a strike from or to others,
Yeah.
okay?
So it would just read camp, loiter, or imbibe alcohol either by day or night on any highway.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so,
Thank you.
yes, Councillor Bain?
You've got imbibe alcohol,
Uh,
and I think in this day and age, should we say, or other intoxicant?
Fair enough, right, yeah.
I mean, we don't want a pot party starting there either.
Yeah, I think,
Controlled substance.
I think that getting into the regulation of where in the community you can or cannot smoke pot is something that we have to carefully research and have a dedicated piece on. I'm not there yet. I don't think that adding that to this would be.
Can be added at another time.
I think it's a good point, but I think it probably deserves a bit more attention and language that has been already addressed by others and has legal support.
Fair enough.
Okay, any other discussion points? All right, it would appear there being none. I will put forward the motion for 3 readings for the traffic and parking bylaw and the amendment bylaw as indicated with the amendments and for 3 readings. That would be my motion. Can I have a second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed. Next up, Lions Bay Parks and Regulations Bylaw, and you will find that on page 99. And I think this one was small. I think the amendment was fairly concise and clean with the aeronautical aspect of this. Any further commentary other than that? CAO?
Nope.
Nope. Then we'll do this a little bit more accelerated. So before us is that, yes?
On page 8 of this one, I'm just wondering how literal anybody's going to get with point 2 at the top of the page. Fly any glider or motor-driven aircraft, including a drone. I'm okay with most of it, but is some kid throwing a little toy glider going to get their knuckles wrapped for it? I mean, I don't think that's what you intend with a glider.
No, I mean, it previously said fly any motor-driven aircraft or glider. Motor-driven. Any motor-driven. Any motor-driven.
Like you can get an RC glider, and that's a totally different thing than a kid's toy. And an RC glider at the Lions Bay Beach Park is not appropriate.
So I think that the words motor-driven need to be moved just to between, take them out of where they are and move them in between any and glider. So it says fly any motor-driven glider or aircraft, including a drone. So now the glider must be motor-driven. So we're not talking a little kid doing this.
Okay.
Yeah, there are some gliders that have no motor on them, they are radio controlled.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't seen one here though, so maybe it's not an issue.
They usually need a pretty big field, huh?
You should have, yeah, but somebody could launch it out to the ocean with a hill, you'd get a good lift, and
Yeah.
onshore breezes would give you a nice flight over the place, and you could land it beautifully there, but I wouldn't say that outside this room.
You've considered this a lot, I see.
Or some flies.
All right.
I think you just did say it outside this room.
All right. Okay, so I will put forward the motion that the traffic and parking bylaw and the amendment bylaw as introduced here with the amendment indicated on page 8. I'll put that forward as motion. Can I have a second? Thank you. Any discussion beyond what we've had? Going, gone. Call a motion. All in favor? Passed. Correspondence.
Oh, correspondence, here we go. This is a letter from Econ to Carl, Mayor Carl Burke, and Council.
No matter how
Roll
many,
out today.
no matter how
I
many
guess the
times I
question
write
really
to
is anyone
Mrs.
going, is
Robertson.
anyone going to this June 18th meeting? Question.
I don't believe anybody's going to.
And then there's
So, no response.
no response. South River Community Rail and Transit Council. Question is, I'm not really quite sure what they're asking us for here. They seem to be upset with the direction Surrey is taking. I don't know if we have any voice or if we...
They're a large contingent that opposes pretty much everything Surrey's doing right now.
Okay.
So their Surrey Council's handling it. These people correspond to every mayor on that trip.
Okay, so it's just
So
for
it's
information.
received for information.
Okay. The Preventing Child Sex Trafficking letter, I wonder if anything like this could go into view. Is that something we want to do to help them spread their message, or do we just take that in for information?
I think, to your point, I think putting it somewhere on our website or the Village Update,
Yeah.
would be helpful. Like, there's some valuable information in here. I'm thinking about parents with young kids. As I was reading through it, Mrs. Peters has come up with, or presented a number of things, well, here are 5 things that parents could do from being lured into sex trafficking. Well, it goes even beyond sex trafficking. I think it's good common sense for kids nowadays, where sort of values are kind of fuzzy nowadays, so that they know how to be comfortable in their own skin and recognize the problem when they see one. So anything I think we could do to help to save a kid from getting dragged into something would be a good idea.
I'm not sure how it would be weaved into our fabric here. John, what's your thinking on this?
Maybe we can find a place for it within our community pages on the website.
There's some good resources there. Kids Health Home, Cuddling House.
So I don't want to just do nothing with this, basically.
In terms of the resources, we could probably also find some real estate in the emergency section of our website, where we have those kinds of responder type agencies listed.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the Metro Vancouver Transit-Oriented Affordable Housing Study, and I'll get to the responses.
Yep.
And the last one was resident correspondent Eva Menke, and he raised 5 points that I thought might be worth talking about. And I wondered if we could just reply to him and touch on whether these are reasonable asks of council. So what is it we can and can't do? For example, dramatically increase law enforcement's noise and speed laws. Can we speak to that, right?
No.
So can you,
Since Mr. Menke was here in the gallery tonight,
yeah,
and I'm very familiar with him, I would offer to write back to him.
okay.
Okay?
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's it.
I take a bullet once in a while. All right, thank you for the correspondence, Councilor Cormier. New business. Public left before pretzel time, so there is none. Closed council meeting. So the proposed topics for discussion in the absence of the public are the Kelvin Grove wastewater treatment plant replacement costs, discussion regarding the infrastructure committee and the Kelvin Grove lot. And previously we'd added 91E in the reasons for close.
So, sorry, Mayor McLaughlin, before you move to read the standard resolution, including the addition of E, because E is one of those ones that requires council to firstly determine that it would be contrary to the best interest of the municipality to have that discussion in open. You need to pass a motion or put forward a motion that that would be the case, and then if that motion is passed, then you move on to the standard resolution on the page.
All right. Well, I think on the information piece, we're going to talk about information that is not known to the public, and probably be doing a recommendation, which may become public. Okay.
So that it would be harmful to discuss in.
That would be harmful to our negotiations. Yes, thank you.
And that's the motion?
That is a motion.
Okay.
Thank you. Any opposed?
Seconder first.
Well, go in the reverse way, thank you. Discussion? Carried. Thank you.
Okay, and then we need to,
Okay, so I move that the meeting be closed to the public on the basis of matters to be considered under the following sections of the Community Charter 91. Part of a council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to or is one or more of the following: a personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, or another position appointed by the municipality. E, which I don't know what the whole one is, but it's to do with sale of assets. J, which is information that is prohibited or information that, if it were presented in a document, would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. I have a motion to go into closed. Thank you. Thank you. We are ready to go, and we are back into the live session. It's 10:05. Thank you. And from the closed session, we are going to report out that on June the 18th, staff will provide an amended terms of reference for discussion for the infrastructure committee. And the second thing to report out is that the Kelvin Grove lot listing price will be amended shortly, and that amount will be made available to the public shortly as well. And that's what we have for it. And then we are going to go back to the tabled section, which is reports 8A2, which is led by the Public Works Manager, and that is on the Kelvin Grove wastewater treatment plant replacement. Public Works Manager, you are on the deck.
So we've had discussions with an engineer who has had success in convincing MOE to allow communities to stay within their current permits and not switch over to the municipal wastewater regulation. Peter?
That was very succinct, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the options are, you know, do we push for a larger plant that can treat more, or do we try to replace the system with an existing, within the existing permit with a like system?
But just to be clear, we would still double the capacity if we did that.
no, not double, add about 100 dwelling units to the capacity.
Slightly more than
It's slightly more than double.
Yeah.
There's 95 parcels now.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Math wasn't my strong point.
Yeah, depending upon the exact type of rotating biological contactor, depending on how accurate the vendor claims are, there would be an increase in the number of pumps we could accommodate. That would need to be ground truth by an engineer.
But even if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, taking a conservative view of the numbers that were provided would still result in roughly the numbers that, you know, an extra 100.
Yeah, so basically, a cubic meter a day of wastewater from a single family residence is about what's generated. So even if we look at 250 or 300 residences, that's 300 cubic meters. That still falls within our permit requirements. So the goal would be to try and install an RBC system that would fit within the confines of the existing concrete well, and that would treat the maximum number of residences allowable within our permit tolerances, providing that the engineer can persuade MOE to keep us on the provincial permitting process as opposed to pushing us onto the new municipal wastewater regulation process. And it has been done by one engineer in a couple of municipalities in BC. He's been able to convince MOE to keep them on the system, and they both have been RBC systems.
So, in terms of possible negative outcomes, going with such a system, if it were to be approved by MOE, would preclude a future expandable type plant that would progressively over time take on and sewer more of the village. And the life expectancy of this kind of plant that we're talking about is probably about 35 years, you say?
35 years, yeah.
Okay. If the ministry says no and triggers a higher level of treatment in the terms of the regulations, then at that point, what would our...
So at that point, we would terminate the relationship with the engineer that we have. We would go to the IC for terms of reference for a treatment plant, put together an RFP, and then go out.
For the study.
That's a whole different ballgame though.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they do not allow, yeah, and having stick-handled West Vans, citrus wined through the process, generally they are very adamant that they want people to move to the new municipal wastewater regulation. So having talked to this engineer who's convinced them on 2 existing RBCs was a real eye-opener. Yeah.
All right, just so that we can get going on this one, I will put forward the motion for all the points on this recommendation, which can be found on pages 2 and 3 of the agenda. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Discussion on this one, and let's try and nail this in the next 15 minutes. I'll lead off on this one without getting into the technical piece. The quick skinny for me is that presuming MOE plays ball and the works manager seems to have the person in line of sight that has had success for that, it quickly benefits the Kelvin Grovites, who are the ones that are the most needy the fastest. So getting them a long-term and thriftier sewage plant is top for me, and that appears to be achieving those goals. The cost will be the cost. The fact that we can tag in another 100 units is a benefit to the village, because as anybody's read anything I've written, we are moving the public works yard sooner or later, and that will be a development site. I hope. So just using what we think may occur, if nobody else does anything, we've got an outlet for them. So I think for me, the recommendations virtually as they stand work for me.
I forgot to add one more thing. The plant failed last week, broke apart. We lost another quarter of the primary media pack. So we're working on, instead of 3/4 of one disc, we're working on a half disc right now.
How does this bode for the water quality?
The water quality would be keeping within our existing permit, which is...
How many tests do you know against the testing?
Which is a 45 BOD and 60 TSS. If we were to voluntarily go with a more stringent treatment, this plant could treat to a 20 BOD and a 30 TSS, but it would reduce the number of homes that could connect to it.
By?
I'd have to do the math on it, but you're basically, from 180 cubic meters a day that it could treat, you drop down to 146. So about 40 homes.
About 40, so you still do 60 more. Okay. All right. If I could go back to the news on the breakage, so when this was working just fine a month, 2 months ago, this sort of breakage wasn't contemplated that it could occur in this format?
No, it was contemplated. It's going to continue.
Okay, so we're last legging this baby.
Yeah.
Okay. So we gotta make some haste here.
Question. During this year that it's going to take to change this,
Here?
didn't it say it'll do a year to complete this?
No.
I thought I just read that.
So I think that's the more in-depth study. If we're forced to do the other study, getting into other treatment methodologies.
Yeah, if MOE does not approve of this, if we cannot convince MOE, then we are obligated, and I would highly recommend we spend the 70,000, replace the media pack that's failing, and then take our time to do a proper study.
Okay.
And
But
that's what's currently in the budget, to
But-
do that.
if we go ahead with this, I fully expect to know within a couple of months whether we can go, and then we would go to an RFP and, yeah, definitely by the end of October, get it installed, if not earlier.
Good. Excellent, in fact. All right, gentlemen, time to weigh in.
Let's hope they allow it.
Okay. Good. Neville?
Yeah, and I think that certainly have to explore it. Absolutely, it's going to be looked at.
Explore or go ahead?
We'll go ahead with, well,
As
explore as in approach MOE, get on
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
engineering.
Yeah.
Councillor Bain, last call.
No, I'm done.
Councillor C, you're good. You like flushing that toilet, I know. I know. All right,
Can I,
stop that.
can I just ask one question?
Maybe it's the dog that likes to do it.
Yeah.
On the bottom of page 24, point 3, another optional consideration is to fund not only engineering study but also a portion of new work team is to negotiate such fund developer interest in adding this capacity to implement more than 10 household connections. What? I don't understand that statement at all.
So right now, the plant, the existing plant, AECOM estimated another 10, and it would be maxed out. So if a developer was coming in
To
and
add
would
to
look
the existing.
to add to the existing plant.
Because elsewhere in the document you say you've got 94 connections at the moment and it's designed for 95. You've actually only got one.
No,
There's 84 connected.
No, but you've got 94 lots. You can't give away. Surely the people that have empty lots have a right for a connection.
yes, they do.
So you can't give that away. So you've only got one, not 10.
10 more connections.
Yes.
Yeah,
nine of which are allocated. Nine of which are allocated to someone's
One more
lot.
lot, yeah.
Math wasn't my strong point.
I think that, if we were getting down to the nitty gritty,
That's
a
I think
strong
we
point
would
of yours.
probably review that carefully and determine whether or not,
Sure.
you can squeeze in another 5 or whatever the case may be, right?
We don't intend to go there. I just want to make a point. It's not 10. It's only one.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Not much wiggle room there. Less wiggle room than you thought.
All right, fun topic that this is. There's any more to contribute on this discussion? Just jump up now, because we're going to call the motion here. Which we now are. I'm calling the motion. All in favor as presented, exactly as presented, the agenda. Thank you. All in favor? Good, done. Unanimous. Good. Just before we go away on this little thing, I think, if I go to the end of the recommendation, which is on page 21 of 170, the last item is the communication plan. So it's, if approved by council, it is recommended that staff provide a synopsis of the foregoing in a village update with the next scheduled news update, or to come when we have a determination from MOE on whether. My preference would be that we get something in there now. And I think if they didn't know about it, because nobody else knew about it, that the breakage of the plant's kind of topical too. So I think I speak on behalf of council, that would be
Yeah, I
good.
think
Staff can get that in.
It wasn't worded properly, but that was our intent. To
Okay.
put out an update this week, and then the next update would go if we got approval to stick with our.
Regardless of, whatever the answer is.
Well, I
maybe
mean,
the next update.
yeah.
I mean, we're all gonna have a legal party in the street, the highway, I mean. Especially the Kelvin Grovites.
It was missing a comma.
Okay, there you go. All right, I think we're down to the end here. So we are done. Thank you all, and we will see you on the 18th. Got a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second, we're out of here.
No,